All right, well, we're here with Farzad Mesbah. He's got a really cool YouTube channel. I've been really digging on it lately. Some really good content. So you guys should just go check that out because Farzad has worked at Tesla, and we're going to just dive in and find out. We're just going to pick his brain clean, I think, if we can today. How you doing?
I'm here for it, man. Thank you so much. Very excited to be on you guys' channel. I've been following you guys for a while. You guys, talking briefly before, but you guys do amazing work. I think you guys are super valuable to the Tesla community, and I'm super psyched to sit down and speak to you both. So thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you. Well, so I want to start right off on a topic which I feel like is very touchy with the Tesla community, which is how do you talk about Tesla when you want to be a little critical, like which Jesse and I do sometimes. We love, look, we all love Elon. We all love Tesla. But just like, your best friend or whatever, when sometimes you want to give them a little constructive criticism. How do you find that goes for you? Because like you worked for the company. Is it the kind of thing where you feel that too, that like if you start to say something about, Elon maybe shouldn't do this or Tesla shouldn't do that, do you feel like a backlash, or how's that reaction to you?
So what's very interesting about that comment is that the reason why Tesla has been able to achieve what it has achieved is because they have a staff that are incredibly critical of what Tesla does on a daily basis, right? So I think from an outsider's perspective, sometimes what might happen is that I think folks just view Tesla and the company so highly because it's so transformative in a way. They've done so many great things that perhaps sometimes it's tough to still be critical of the things that they don't perform well. So for example, one video that I thought you guys did that was excellent not too long ago was about some of the hardships with Tesla service that you and the people have been experiencing in your area. I thought that was great because the only way Tesla gets better is if the weaknesses in certain areas are highlighted and people are vocal about what they should be doing to make it better, right? And I can tell you one of the things that impressed me about Tesla being inside is that Tesla does pay attention to negative feedback. It's very important. Us working on the service distribution side, the thing that we hated to see, especially back in 2017, 2018 while I was there, was seeing people having hardships, And so we saw that we're like, yo, we got to do a better job. We have to do a better job. As far as me being critical of Tesla or Elon, I think I try my best to be as even as possible. I try to sort of weigh the goods and the bad, and I try to really say, okay, so net, they're doing great things and they're being positive, but that doesn't absolve them of being perfect. And no company's perfect, no person's perfect. I haven't really experienced too much backlash, to be completely honest. Perhaps I haven't been like super critical in some areas because I always try to weigh from like a holistic perspective. But it's interesting, and I agree with you guys. I think if there's some criticism or something that you guys feel like should be brought up and spoken about, you should 100% talk about it. I mean, it's whole within that context of like, freedom of speech and really saying what you feel and what you experience, as long as there's some validity to it, which I don't know if anybody's being critical about a company or Elon or whatever, if they have stuff to back it up, like why wouldn't you say it, So I think it's important, and I think it helps the company get better over time. And like I said, from my internal experience, the company pays attention to it, and they absolutely try their hardest to make it better over time. That I can say with a fact. And the fact that they have so much talented people internally gives me the confidence that over time they'll get to where they need to be in some of those weakness areas. But for folks to be afraid or to not want to speak up about the negative things that a company might do, I think is a little bit silly. Is at the detriment of the company because they won't know that's going on in a way, right? They need as much data sets as possible to act on things that they need to act on. Long answer to your question. I'm sorry.
No, great answer. Great answer. What do you think about Tesla communications? What I mean is there's a lot of problems I think Tesla has that could be almost mitigated entirely if communication was better. So if we look at like Tesla's service, let's say, a lot of times what we've heard from people in our experience ourselves is that if just a friendly person was at Tesla who said, oh man, that's awful, like 90% of the problem would go away. But instead you get like this a lot of times it feels like you're getting this very corporate, like,
or automated
thing. And so we've almost become de facto like Tesla service people, where people reach out to us and are like, Zach and Jesse, I'm having this problem. And we're like, oh, that's awful. And then they feel better. What was your experience in the company? Do you feel like that's a problem? Is it like that everything has to go through Elon and that's why no one can say anything? Or are we just outliers? Like, what was your experience?
Yeah, I don't think it's at all something that Elon has to control 100% of the time. I just think, man, from my experience, I think it might be, and this is just me talking, this is my opinion. I think it's kind of like, where does it fall within the priorities of what the company's trying to achieve, right? So if from a holistic perspective, the company's performing really well, they have a lot of demand. In most cases, they're not really having any issues. And as they grow, I think that the one thing that they're facing now is, as they get much bigger, the net number of people that might be having sort of a challenging experience is increasing with that net number. With the more cars they sell, the more people they touch and everything like that. The net number of things that could go wrong or are sort of controversial in a way is going to increase. So I think it's just a matter of how the company views their prioritization. And it's been a big debate that's been going on, especially as of late. I had somebody on my channel not too long ago where we really discussed like sort of that communication piece, almost like a PR department in a way too. Like should Tesla really invest heavily, or at least invest in a couple people to be sort of the face of like, hey, when something goes wrong, this is how we're going to sort of address it. If something false comes up about the company, this is how we're going to address it. But as far as like it having to flow through Elon, that was not at all the case that I found while I was working at the company. I think it's like, where is it in the priority of everything else that Tesla is doing? And I think over time, as Tesla really gets super large and truly mainstream, I would predict that they will invest in that in some way. But again, it just goes back to a question of prioritization and where is it within the company.
On the latest Tesla owner Silicon Valley interview with Elon, part 3, they raised the question about advertising, or they kind of went off on that little tangent. And Elon talked about that maybe we should advertise. Like, he was talking about how, if GM had a bad article written about them, their, marketing executive would call up the newspaper and say like, hey guys, do you want us to pull our advertising? So he's realized that like that would have some value. We were talking about it on the show, and I'm wondering what your opinion is. Do you think it's time for Tesla to spend some money on advertising so that they get better PR?
Oh man. From an advertising perspective, the way I view advertising, it's a demand lever. That's how I think about advertising. So if demand is not an issue, and it doesn't appear to be an issue, and I don't think it's going to be an issue for a long while, to be completely honest, I don't really think they need to invest money in advertising per se. But that's kind of like advertising, but then you have the angle of like when people are out there just straight up just talking smack about the company, right? Or saying just negative things. Like back 2017, 2018, 2019, when the FUD storm was at its peak, when it was super, super crazy, Tesla probably could have benefited from having some sort of team that would help them sort of either falsify, kind of what the Tesla community was doing in a way during that time, right? And I think Tesla was very fortunate to have that kind of community, but it was born out of the fact that, in my opinion, they had a product that people really believed in. They had a mission that people really believed in. They have a leader that people really believe in. They have, from my experience with the people working there, they have a culture that's worth believing in. They treat their people really, really well. So they kind of had this perfect storm of people that really believed in the company, and so they benefited from that. I think over time, I think the advertising thing, again, it's going to be really a demand lever. And then as far as trying to shut down FUD or trying to shut down like negative news articles or things, I think, again, it's where does it sit within the priority of the company, and how do they view that within the context of what they're trying to achieve from like their mission's perspective. Like, is it in some way preventing their ability to advance the advent of sustainable transport?
Because to me, it just seemed like if Elon threw, let's say, $500 million into advertising per year, which is still a fraction of what Ford or GM spends, but if they spent that, which is basically what they lost on Bitcoin this year, it seemed like it might be a wise investment, not even for the demand lever, because I get what you're saying. I think demand is going to be good going forward for a while, but I was thinking for 2 reasons. One, the next generation of Tesla buyers are going to be more mainstream people, and so they're not going to be as avid Tesla followers as we are. And then second is I do think it would buy him a lot of positive press. So instead of those fuddy articles coming out that are just like Tesla sucks.
Well, just any article that you read, It's Elon Musk says this very non-controversial thing. Then, 2 sentences about what actually happened. Then 6 paragraphs about, and Elon is very controversial. And remember the 420 tweet and the pedo guy and the blah, blah, blah. And you're like, what does this have to do with the article?
Right.
Like, do I really... Is this someone who's never heard of Elon Musk reading this article? Like, I need to know everything about Elon before I can... It's like, okay. And then you finally get to the bottom of the article, and it's a little conclusion sentence like, we'll see what happens. And it's like, what the heck did I just read? I just feel like it would be, I don't know, more, if you read a GM article or a Toyota article, they're not explaining,
right. Jim Farley's what he had for breakfast.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like, whoa. I feel like it could change the just, for the people who do read past the second sentence, like,
or it could change the headline, because sometimes the writer actually writes a half decent article, and then the editor just chooses I don't know where they got the headline from.
Wacky headline.
Yeah, I do wonder how much of the equation is there's a growing sentiment, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but there's a growing sentiment within, say, the population, where they are starting to become a little bit more aware when something is sensationalized, or when something is like perhaps not written in the best with the best journalistic integrity, let's just say that. And I wonder how much Elon and the company are sort of confident in that, and saying like, you know what, the people are just going to be able to, even long term, 5 to 10 years from now, there's going to be a shift in how people view these articles, and there's going to be a sort of a sense of like, over time, this is just going to fix itself, because you're going to have basically a media outlets that are just spewing garbage, for lack of a better word, and they're going to lose the readership, they're going to lose the trust, right? And over time, there's going to be more and more reputable news sources that are going to be more fair, and they're going to be more factually accurate about what it is. And the people that would want to follow Tesla, want to purchase Tesla in the long term, perhaps they're going to start becoming more aware of this, and it's just something that's going to resolve itself. I don't know. I'm just kind of putting out there as a variable, because I think that's a legitimate part of how I think Elon and the leadership team would think about some of these things, because really they're a lot more long-term thinking in a way. Now, there might be a lever that appears, though, that says, you know what, we're getting to the point where this is not going to be part of the equation anymore. We do have to invest, right? And honestly, I'm thinking about it a lot lately. I really am, about the whole communications and PR and advertising. Again, it goes back to, how does Elon and leadership team view it within the context of demand or the mission that they're trying to achieve? And it's going to be super interesting watching it unfold over time, because it could help in some ways, but yeah, I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Because even if the news articles aren't going to get any less fuddy, I just feel like there's going to be more Teslas on the road, and Teslas sell themselves so well. And I just feel like I have seen people get into my car who are just like, nope, this is stupid, I freaking hate it, blah, blah, blah. And then you punch it, and then they go, oh, hang on. And what about this? I could put solar on my house and save a whole bunch of money? What are you talking about? Like, everyone from every background, walk of life. You show them, and then they go, oh, I get it. They don't care what they read anymore. Everything has just been shattered. And they go, oh, it's rare that I find anyone who, gets out of the car and is like, well, whatever, it's stupid.
It's the ultimate exercise in word of mouth selling. It's like, I don't think it's, and again, I'm trying to like not be biased, because I've been an investor for 10 years. I've worked at the freaking company. I think Elon's doing a great job, and that they have the most talented team. There's way too many things that would make me super biased, but I truly think it's sort of like a revolutionary way of really approaching how to sell a product and how to build a community and a customer base that is super, 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 super sticky. And it's all through product. And it's just investing as much effort and dollars as humanly possible to ensure that the product is at its absolute best, and then everything will just work out in the end.
I just think that it's so amazing, because they could have made the cars 20% worse on almost every metric, and they would still be great. 20% slower fast charging speed, 20% slower, 0 to 60 acceleration, 20% less range. They'd still be great cars. It's just that extra 20% that's put in, and you're like, oh, you're selling me a race car with double wishbone suspension and 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, like on a Model 3? It's like, huh, I don't have to really mod it. Like we had a race car go up Pikes Peak, and it was just a Model 3 performance. Like we put a wrap on it, and that was it. Like we had to, pull the seats out, put in a roll cage, but they wouldn't even let us, alter the suspension.
I just saw what's his name? Popst? I forget. He's like a race car driver. He has a Model S Plaid that he threw unplugged, I think. I forget who they did it with, but like they took a Model S Plaid up Pikes Peak, and that thing placed second. It's like, what the hell's going on? Like, this is so dumb. Like, why would anybody do this? And then you put it within the context of like price to value ratio, and that's really what it starts becoming evidence. You spend $130,000 for a freaking Pikes Peak destroying machine, where the other guys are spending, I don't know, $500,000. I don't even know how much it would cost to make like a custom car going Pikes Peak, but it's unprecedented in a way. And when I think about it within the context of like competition, I really think it's going to be a gigantic struggle for anyone to get anywhere close from a product perspective, but it's going to be fascinating to see as it becomes clear that Tesla is here to stay, not just as a EV mainstay, but as a transportation mainstay period. And potentially, in my opinion, I think they're going to be the largest vehicle seller in the market by far. At that point, I think things are going to shift from the competition being perhaps like, oh no, we're going to get there, to holy crap, like we are probably going to go out of business unless we do something about this. And I'm curious to see what that tone shift looks like. And so put that within the context of communications and PR and all that stuff. What's going to happen at that point when you have literal industries potentially suffering because of how dominant this player is in the end, if the product strategy turns out to be correct, which I'm confident it will. So we're on the cusp of something crazy. That's what it feels like to me.
I want to introduce our viewers to you. If people watch your channel, they already know that you talk a lot about the culture at Tesla and how it works when you work there. But I want you to kind of introduce viewers who may not be familiar with you yet and the culture there. I've just been fascinated watching your videos to learn that you had so much free reign, and that employees, not just you, all Tesla employees, it seems, have free reign to solve problems, which is, if you're a smart person, that's why you want to get up in the morning, I would imagine, because you go to work and instead of being like, I got to get this report done by 5, you've picked a problem that you're excited about and you're working on it. And it didn't even have to be a problem. Like you've mentioned, there were problems you were working on that you weren't really even trained in. So I'm just really interested.
It was like 95% of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, tell me, like, maybe you can give us an anecdote or a tale of something that you were working on that was just so different than you would find in other companies.
100%. Yeah. Thank you for that question. So the thing that really stuck out to me is that I think Tesla just knows that they have the best of the best. But the thing that sets them apart is that they trust who they've hired. And they're willing to give you the keys to the company to make it as good as humanly possible. And when you combine that with the fact that everything that Tesla does is really from scratch, right? I mean, you think about not just the car, the car, of course, battery tech, drivetrain, how to build it, UI, infotainment, whatever. Go down the list. It's a one-off, and they've started that product, whatever you want to call it. But that's not just a factory thing. That's an everything thing, right? So when you think, my background, I worked in service distribution for 4 years. I joined the company as an analyst, but I was really within the context of building out a distribution network in the States and part of Europe, primarily from a analytics perspective, but also helping with process improvement, also helping with layouts, also helping with inbound and outbound processes, inventory control, so on and so on. So I came from a background of analytics and building dashboards and building KPIs, but then within 3 months, I'm on the freaking warehouse floor designing how to make our outbound process for the warehouse 200% faster. Like, this is not something I'm familiar with. So you have to think about how to bring product into the building. You have to think about how to QA the product. You have to think about how to put it away, how to put it in a place that it's easy accessible, how to pick it, how to bring it to the outbound floor, how to pack it, how to stage it, how to put it into the freaking trailer, and then utilizing as many tools as humanly possible to make that as straightforward and as easy for the employee and as error proof as humanly possible. And so when I'm somebody who's just been freaking, I don't know how you guys like overlay the heads over the things. I'm here coding, whatever on the computer or whatever, for 7 years before as a director of BI and pricing. Then I'm getting forklift certified to try and figure out how to make the picking process from the 60 level as smooth as possible, and then implementing all those things together. So I learned, man, like I would say like 80% of what I know today, I learned from those 4 years in Tesla, from building out a warehouse, processes, leadership, mentorship. It's been insane. It's been completely nuts. And it's because Tesla trusts its people. They trust their people. And there's a culture where you're incentivized as a leader to pass that on to the folks that report to you or the folks that you work with. It's like this. It's like the largest startup in the world is the best way to describe it. And I'm sure you guys know, like you guys have obviously built an incredible brand with what you do as entrepreneurs, but I'm sure your team is small and you guys can move at the speed of thought. You're probably like, oh, we want to do this, just get it done. Tesla does this with 100,000 people. It's insane. But the only way you do that is by trusting your employees.
I want to get to the point. So you were not a, factory floor kind of warehouse guy before, and then you got forklift certified?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was an analyst with...
Whoa, hang on. Because, okay, so I worked, I had an internship where I worked at a plastics processing facility. It was, whatever. And there was a clear delineation between who was in the office, and luckily that was me. I had to wear a, collar every day, and who was on the floor. And the guys on the floor would sometimes come up with really smart things to do, and the guys in the office would hate it. They would hate it because they didn't come up with it, but they don't know how to come up with anything. And that silo, those two silos, those two different worlds, butted heads so constantly, and it was comical. Here I was, this 20-year-old kid, and I could go in and talk to both sides because, like, who the heck is this 20-year-old kid? And I could come up with those solutions, kind of do similar things, but it was so hard to do because the culture of the company was set up against me. Hearing that you got your forklift license, which meant that you actually could understand what was going to happen when you went to get something off of a high shelf or something like that, it just rings positive alarm bells in my head where I'm going like, well, that's a genius. Like, of course, if you don't know how to do something, how can you tell someone how to do it? And that was the thing that I would always encounter at this job. It was just like, we need to get 400 of these. And then it was just like, well, you obviously don't know what you're talking about because that's either really easy or that's literally impossible to do. And so by gaining that experience, wow.
It's like the perfect combination of blue collar and white collar to the point where...
Well, you're doing something.
Exactly.
Like
You're being
doing
effective.
is a whole thing, and dividing it up into white and blue collar is so stupid.
But hang on, I want to take there's some viewers watching right now, I'm sure, who would say, why'd you hire this guy to do that job when you could have gotten a guy from Detroit who's been doing it for 40 years and he knows that job so well. So you just waste Tesla. I knew I should short Tesla. You don't know what you're talking about. You train this guy, sure, but you could have had, Doug from Detroit. And day one, he would have known what to do. What do you say to that person who's like, the smarter thing would have been to headhunt someone who's done this for 40 years?
I don't think they would have known what to do. I think that's really the important thing here, because these guys, and I'm not gonna say that this guy with 40-year experience is bad at what he does, right? But I think it goes back to, how does somebody fit within a culture where everybody's empowered to bring the most value to the company? When a lot of these folks that are in, and this is my assumption, okay, I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that I'm right, is that folks that come from those cultures are super about structure, silo, and then everybody, like, we just have to make sure everybody's doing exactly the thing we're telling them to do, because that's going to be the easiest way to track their performance, and it's the easiest way to freaking fire people if they're not doing a good job. Where Tesla is like, if you're in a role. You get hired as a role, right? But if you find a thing that's like, okay, this is, if I get certified for this, or if I get into the process and I learn how to pick, how to pack, how to ship, it's going to help me do my job better, because then I know what to track, or I know what the hardships are from the job that's going to allow me to make, maybe I'm part of that team that offers a solution from an outsider's perspective, but I'm not going to be able to give you a good recommendation unless I actually freaking do the job. And people with that background, in my opinion, typically do not have nearly as much willingness to get their hands dirty and actually understand what people do on the floor, right? And so I think where Tesla excels is that they hire people that are willing to get their hands dirty, regardless of experience, regardless of background, regardless of wherever they come from. It's the true entrepreneurial spirit of like, I'm just going to get in there and figure it out and use my skill set and my toolbox to make it better. And I'm not going to be pouty or afraid to work with anyone. I'll work with anyone. And Tesla's, again, brilliance from a culture perspective, and you read this from the handbook that's like public, but it's so very true in the company, is that anyone can work with anyone. And ultimately, if you're trying to make something super, super good and as fast as humanly possible, you have to allow your best people that have the solutions to come together and work on that solution, regardless of where they work.
So we hear a lot about a lot of these positive things of Tesla, and we know that they're hiring the best of the best, and that they're usually very efficient with their, what they're able to actually do. The other thing that I always hear is that people get burnt out working at Tesla, and that they are spending many hours a week, well past 40, and that they don't have any time for any sort of family. So it's great for the 20-somethings who don't have any, the wife and kids or anything like that. But then as soon as they start to get a little bit older and they want to settle down, they want to stop working the 60, 80-hour weeks, and they want to, have a good salary, and they want to go live somewhere, relaxing. And that's when we tend to lose the talent. My understanding has always been that great, get them when they're young or when they're ready to work really hard. And then when they're spent, they're gone, and we'll get in the new best people, because Tesla can always hire the new best people. I think that there's a worry that like we're going to run out of talented people someday, or that Tesla's going to have such a bad reputation for being such a hard place to work at. I mean, I know I was an engineer. I was like, people were like, you should go work for Tesla. And I was like, I don't know if I want to work for Tesla. That sounds like a lot of work. And kudos to you for actually, going and doing that. What do you say to that? I mean, do you think that we're going to like run out of talent, or do you think that it's a burnout kind of culture, or do you think we all kind of have the wrong take?
I like to say that most of Tesla's employees haven't worked at the company yet. I think I really do feel like there's still a tremendous amount of talent out there that is going to be able to work at the company and be very successful, given its demanding nature. And it's a 100% agreed that the job's not for everybody. It absolutely is not. It's very demanding, because the problems are brand new, and Tesla likes to build everything from scratch. And you're surrounded by people that want to work as hard as humanly possible to make this mission come alive, right? It's a mission-driven company first and foremost. And so that requires a certain level of commitment from a person to make that stuff happen. And Tesla is always ensuring that culture stays alive and well. The culture of, we want the best of the best that are willing to work as hard as humanly possible to make stuff happen, right? But I think there's also, and I've been thinking about this a lot, I think there's a level where Tesla makes that part of you come out more than anywhere else that you would work. And so what I mean by that is, there's a certain percentage of people, like say if you take 100 people that join Tesla, I think like maybe like 30 to 40% of those people, I'm just pulling numbers out of my butt, so don't like actually hold me to this, but like there's a percentage of people that join the company with the intention of going in and like literally working 80-hour weeks because they want to, right? But then I think the larger majority of the workforce are people that go in there and they're wide-eyed and they're like, holy crap, I've never been anywhere like this before. It truly feels like we're doing something important, and then something like goes off in their brain. And they're like, you know what? I'm comfortable putting in that much amount of effort and time, because this is more than just a job. This is more than just a paycheck. I'm surrounded, and it's so obvious, you're surrounded by the best talent in the world in my opinion, the best culture to work at if you're trying to get stuff done that is important. And I think that variable there is not well understood, but I think it's a very important one as to why Tesla has been as successful as it has been and why it will continue to be successful into the future, because they have that variable. They just inspire people. Like when you're in there, you're inspired. Like I was working like insane hours, but I'm like, this is important. It feels great. And then when you are like freaking trying to solve this impossible thing over and over again, because it's not, you're given short time frames, everything's breaking around you. You're given a stick. The analogy I like to use: we're given sticks and stones, and we're expected to build a spaceship. We're like, holy crap, how are we going to do this? But then when you sit down with the smartest people in the world, and you start actually working towards that goal with a lot less than you think you needed, it's addicting. It's a very addicting feeling, and ultimately, I think that is why Tesla's never going to run out of talent, is because they're going to bring the best out of people once they join the company. And they're like, holy crap, this is actually way more important than just the job. It feels like I'm somewhere special. Let me know if that makes sense. But I think ultimately that's the thing that's going to enable Tesla to just be okay for a really long time.
Do you think that Tesla, through not even just their success, but through their past employees who are now entering the workforce and going to work for other companies, do you think that Tesla is going to be changing the culture towards that? Do you think that we're going to have a renaissance of sorts, a Tesla-driven, pushing the envelope kind of people, or do you think that people are going to be, who've put in a lot of time at Tesla and kind of want to let off the accelerator? Do you think that they're going to bring that same level to other companies, or do you think that the culture needs to be there at those companies in order for it to flourish?
That's a really good question. I think a percentage of the workforce that moves on from Tesla will be the ones that are responsible for birthing those cultures at the companies that they go to or the companies that they start. But I do think the companies that they go to, unless they have a mission that's similar in scope to Tesla or as important, I think perhaps over time, those folks might not have that same fire, because we're all human in the end, right? There's very few of us, I think, that are willing to be in pain for 80 hours a week for extended periods of time, But I do think there's going to be, I think a renaissance is a good way of putting it. I think there's going to be a significant percentage of the workforce in the, say, next 10 to 20 years that's going to come out of Tesla with a lot of learned lessons on how to build a culture that maximizes efficiency, speed, results, and people wanting to come together to get stuff done. That's going to birth some pretty special companies. It's going to be hard to tell when that's going to happen, but I'm 100% sure that's going to happen. It's impossible not to. It's way too much of a life-changing experience working at that company for that not to happen. Now, I don't know if that's 1% of the people that leave or if that's 10% of the people, but I do think there's going to be some special things that come out of it. I mean, look at J.B. Straubel. Like, that's one example, right? Redwood Materials. That guy's going to revolutionize freaking recycling for batteries for all companies. I think he just inked a deal with Toyota or somebody just recently. That's one example. But there's going to be very many of those over time. I think that's a really interesting question. A really, really good one. It's going to be interesting to see what percentage of those people actually make a Tesla-sized impact. But I'm willing to bet it's probably going to be, it's going to be enough that people are going to pay attention.
I mean, that's a really good point, because if you look at the founder of SPAN, which is the smart electrical panel company, Tesla. If you look at Monarch Tractor, which is probably going to revolutionize electric tractors, Tesla. Like, I can go on and on. I'm an angel investor, and I can't tell you how many companies the founders or the co-founders are from Tesla. So it's just, yeah, I think you're right. I think we're someday, I mean, someone should write a book on this now, because like a lot of these companies are all from that mindset of people who are just like, I can solve a problem.
Right. And I wonder how, I think that they're going to have to be newer companies. I don't think that too many other older companies are going to be able to pivot. I'm thinking of, back in the day, all the American car brands made crappy cars, big surprise. And then, the Japanese came in with their cars, and the Americans were like, what is this system? And it's Kaizen and Six Sigma, and we're going to figure all this stuff out. And it's very on paper, easy to understand, and you just follow the flow chart, and you come up with a better product. And, corporate America loved that. It was just so great.
Just in time.
And I mean, I remember we had Kaizen events at the place I worked, and, it was once a month, and we would order pizza for everybody. And that was the one time that the white collar and the blue collar would get together, and we would sort of sort the thing out, but it was very structured, and everyone knew who their place.
Did you have a PowerPoint and stuff too?
Yes, we tried to make one at the end to show everyone what we did.
Awesome.
And, which took longer than what we did. And I just feel like it's going to be so much harder to put this magic in a bottle compared to Six Sigma and Kaizen and stuff like that. I just think it's going to be so much harder to encapsulate it, write it down, and teach it in some stuffy
in an old school company,
at some stuffy Harvard Business School. Like it's just going to be how do you show that without getting a forklift certification and going and doing something. Like it's just going to be so difficult for other companies to catch up when all they can attract is kind of the boring people who probably haven't worked at Tesla.
Well, what I want to ask you, Farzad, is that one big thing that attracts people to Tesla that we hear about, or keeps them as well, is that you can be an owner of the company, right? There's really good stock option plan. And I think a lot of people out in corporate America don't understand that very much, because like, why would I want to own stock in GM, for instance, if I went to work for them? Like, not that exciting. Can you tell me a bit about that? Does that really motivate employees at the company?
Big time. I mean, from the time it motivated them so much, especially while I was there, that I held classes like during lunch breaks to teach like people the basics on like what a market cap is, what a stock price is, so they can really understand, because they were asking for it. They're like, okay, so like I really want to be invested in this thing because I can feel like this is something special, but I have no idea what a freaking market cap is, right? And the thing that blew my mind, which I don't know why it did, but it makes so much sense, is like people didn't really understand what a price share actually, like a price of a stock actually was. They would take an Apple and they would take a Tesla, and Tesla was like $200, and Apple was like, I don't know, at 80, and they're like, oh, Tesla's too expensive. Like it's 3 times more valuable. But like I'm like, I'm not gonna make fun of you because I understand why that's the case. But then I'm like, okay, but it's not really it. It's the market cap divided by the number of shares outstanding. And they're like, holy crap. Okay, I get it. So when you put it within the context of a market cap, it sort of becomes much more clear. But majority of the workforce was extremely happy and passionate about owning a piece of the company, especially while I was there. So with the ESPP program, which is no secret, public companies offer all the time, you can buy Tesla at a 15% discount at the end of a 6-month period. You have to put a percentage of your salary in escrow. So that's one way of doing it. And then the other way is that if you join the company or through a raise or something, through a promotion, Tesla offers you, as a part of your compensation, they offer you stock. And people really value that. And to your point, a GM or a Ford or anyone else, it's going to be, at least for those that are really paying attention to the long-term potential of those companies, it's probably easy to find out why Tesla could have a much longer runway when it comes to a higher valuation over time than established player, especially within the same industry. And so that's a pretty big lever. From like warehouse worker up to like director, VPs, I think everybody really understands why Tesla stock is so valuable.
What's it like working for Elon when he's constantly pushing the timelines? So we're seeing it right now with Tesla Bot, right? Where he said like there's going to be this AI day number 2 in August, and they said, well, you know what? I'll push it back a month. You have a whole extra month to get me a humanoid robot. Go team. And I'm just picturing being on that team going, what? We have to have a working prototype by September 30th. Is that horrifying if you're on that team, or is it just invigorating? Like, what's it like? Because I'm sure you must have encountered something similar.
Yeah, so we didn't have like direct contact with Elon, but we had direct contact with the people that worked directly with Elon. And so they would basically pass on what Elon was saying, right? So it's all those things. It is terrifying, exhilarating, exciting, and like at the same time, it's a lot of like, okay, how the hell are we going to make this happen? Like how, like, but here's the big lesson that we learned, right, from that experience is that a lot of things are way more possible than you think if you are very good at finding the next step, and what you need to learn how to do is ask the right questions. You have to figure out how to ask the right question that enables you to move to the next step. And so painful, it hurts a lot, but in the end, especially if you're successful, which, I mean, basically every time we put our minds to it, we were successful, you get that feeling of exhilaration. It just feels incredible. You've all come together to make something happen that felt impossible. And then at the end of it, you're like, holy crap, we got it done. We did it. We would go out to a freaking bar after, or go bowling or something to celebrate it. And we're all like high-fiving, hell yeah, we got this done. We did it, It's for those that are that like making stuff, again, like if they really enjoy getting stuff done, it's an addicting feeling. It's not for everybody, but it's great. It's like any hardship in life. I mean, I'm sure you guys can think back to times in your lives when you were faced something very difficult, and then you overcame, and it felt incredible. You're like, holy crap, I can't believe how much I learned from this experience, and I feel so good about doing it. Tesla was like every freaking month, every week, like bang, 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 bang. It's addicting. It can become very addicting very quickly.
All right, but not everybody working at Tesla can be this amazing, awesome. I know that there are people who are ready to pass the buck at a moment's notice, who are, like, oh, well, we couldn't do that because of this, and so it's going to take another month, or that'll take, we'll get that done in a few sprints. Don't you guys worry, even though it's already was a few sprints, and sprints is 2 weeks.
I love how you use the word sprint.
Yeah. It's just a couple sprints. We'll have that ready. What happens to those people? Like, are you guys, okay, Doug's a little slow. Time to, like, does that happen, or?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good question. Yeah, that happens all the time. I mean, it's, Tesla's not a place where there's zero turnover. Like, that's like, it's impossible. Like whatever percentage of the workforce you hire, they're not going to fit the bill, or they're going to be burnt out much quicker than you expected, or they're going to be somebody that's just, they talked a good game, they were great for a couple of weeks, and then you're like, okay, I see what you're doing, right? So from my experience, so I can only talk about my experience, the leadership groups that I was on were extremely good at constant feedback. So it wasn't this like model of like, we're going to wait to talk about everything you do on your yearly review, or, I'm just going to be sort of lax on these things. I mean, every single week you have a touch base with your leader, and you're talking about the progress you've made. You're talking about the things you're achieving. So you're given constant feedback. So you always know where you stand. And so what that allows the company to do is, if somebody's not performing, we give them, the time, more than enough time to get back to where they need to be, and we give them feedback as best as possible to make that sort of thing happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's doesn't work out, and the person is released. And the one thing that I learned is I think Tesla's very super fair when it came to that. At least the teams that I was part of, super fair. Like, we give people a lot of time to get caught up, but that constant feedback allows you to just pull that lever at any point once the person is not achieving what they're supposed to do, and you give them the ability to correct it. So
I want to talk about full self-driving. I feel like it is, Elon just said it, it's basically the difference between Tesla being worth nothing, I think he said, and we're being worth, so much more. It's a very controversial topic because it doesn't exist yet in its full form. And so a lot of people are on one side of the fence where they're like, this will never happen. Cars can never drive themselves. And then I think there's people like you and I who are like, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. We don't know exactly when, but it's going to happen. Talk to me about your thoughts about full self-driving, when you think it's going to happen, and if at all, and what kind of value you think it's going to bring for the company.
I do think it's going to happen. So there were a couple signals that happened earlier this year that gave me the confidence that we're much closer than folks might realize, especially in some markets. The fact that Karpathy went on sabbatical, the fact that Elon decided to purchase Twitter, that to me tells me that there is a certain level of confidence that that project is going to get done relatively soon, because they have the right pieces in place, and it's just a matter of time. I don't think that those two folks would be as willing to, take on other things or kind of step away from the company unless the pieces around them were where they needed to be. And so I do kind of, and again, like it's like you should never listen to Elon when he gives you timelines for freaking full self-driving because they're always wrong. But I do think those two signals are pretty big. I'm a full self FSD beta tester. I was a tester when I worked at the company before it got released to the public. So I've seen it like sort of evolve from this like do nothing thing to a pretty good system that still needs help in some places, but it's come a really, really long way. And so if I put it within the context of like, okay, so Tesla in earnest has started working on full self-driving the day that they let go of Mobileye, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, 2016-ish, something like that. So that's 8 years. Okay. No, 6 years. Wow. Math major. Let's go. So 6 years. So Tesla has gone from nothing to on the cusp of releasing a level 4 autonomy system in 6 years, while they're working on a factory, while they're building out a distribution network, while they're building out a service network, while they're working on battery tech. Like, this is insanity. Like, what the hell is this? So 6 years' time, they've come a really long way. So if you put it within the context of that, even if they're 2 years late, even if it's 2024, okay, that's 8 years from nothing to a full self-driving system. And I think once that happens, I think I do think it's going to be super, super challenging for anyone else to come and play in this field because of how Tesla has approached the data gathering process of the system. So having a fleet of FSD beta drivers that are out there gathering the data is truly the moat that Tesla needs from a perspective of being first to market and keeping that for a really long time. From the research I've done, and you guys obviously correct me if I'm wrong, everyone else is approaching it in a very different manner where they're using LiDAR and freaking sonar and lasers. I don't even know what the hell they're using. They're using just, 17 different things to gauge. They're using maps. They're ensuring that everything's like super solid and like everything's there. That cone is there always kind of thing, right? But the problem with that is obviously scalability, right? You're going to have a very hard time scaling that forward if one of the key things of your system is to ensure that everything that exists in that 3D space exists. Whereas Tesla is like, screw that. We're going to approach it from a neural net perspective where we're going to make the system behave like a human being. And so it doesn't matter what sort of environment you're on, the car is going to be able to drive itself. And so that's why when I'm in Austin, Texas, doing full self-driving, it works. And then when I go to San Francisco, it works. When I go to New York City, it works. Probably not as well, but it still works, right? So that's proof that system is capable of being, plug and play. You can just drop it wherever you want. And as the fleet grows, you're going to have that exponential growth on data sets that come through. And so what Tesla really has to figure out how to scale, which with the Dojo system, I'm sure they're working on, is processing that data as quickly as humanly possible so the system can really catch up to where it needs to be for it to go level 4. I mean, this is not new stuff, right? But I think it's super, super logical. And I think it's the right way. And I think once Tesla gets there, I think the valuation of the company is going to completely transform to two different reasons why. One is because obviously full self-driving is going to generate a ton of profit for the company. That's not a secret. It's basically 100% margin. And if people are able to take advantage of a fleet of cars, that's going to be pennies on the dollar versus an Uber driver because you don't have a driver in the car and it's super safe. So your liability goes down, blah, blah, blah. So you're going to have this entire market of people that are going to be able to afford transportation, especially in an inflationary environment where you could have a recession, God knows what, right? So you remove that variable completely. And then 2, it's going to give Tesla a lot of, clout for being able to solve a really difficult AI problem, which I think is going to start giving evaluation to the bot and any other sort of AI things they want to work on because they'll have a proof of concept, right? It's going to be similar to the Model 3 ramp, where once the Model 3 ramp happened, then it was obvious that Tesla was going to be very profitable because of that Model 3 ramp. The stock valuation went from 300 to freaking 3,000, right? Once they get the clout from solving the FSD problem, that's going to be the next leg up of Tesla becoming a true AI company. And so that's how I view the valuation of that technology.
The clout is a very interesting concept because I hadn't really even been thinking about it. I had been doing, the dollars and cents of, full self-driving cars. But you're right. I mean, if someone is like wait, I just saw that car drive by and there's nobody in it. I mean, I've done that in a parking lot before, obviously, with my car, and people are just like, what? But if they're seeing it drive down the street and they're like, there's nobody in that, and then they're getting in it and they're going, there's nobody in this car, you're just going to be like, I have to, where's all the other people who I've been hearing for the last 5 years have been ahead of Tesla, constantly ahead of Tesla. I read every article I read. It's every study that comes out. Tesla's way behind. Oh, they don't know what they're doing.
They don't use LiDAR.
All of a sudden, I can download the Tesla app and order a car, and it'll drive me with nobody in it anywhere in the world. Whoa, hey, hang on. I need to get in on this company. I just feel like everyone who invests money is just going to go, what?
Well, and at that point,
then they're going to call up hey, broker, why haven't you been investing me in Tesla this whole time?
at that point, don't the other car companies go out of business? We kind of posited this years ago. I think at some point Elon's going to stop selling you cars because why car ownership doesn't make any sense. Americans will fight you to the end on that, I suppose, but it doesn't make any sense to own a car. It's so expensive. It'd be much better to just call one up when you need it.
Yeah. And I think this was discussed on that the Silicon Valley podcast that he just did recently, where licensing is going to become a legitimate business for Tesla at some point. The manufacturers are going to have zero choice. Because if we're correct, or at least if I'm correct about my assumption that full self-driving is coming, and it's coming at least within the next 2 years, probably much, much quicker than that, you're screwed. Like, bye-bye. Like, it literally won't exist anymore. Now, that's in the US market, right? So you also have to think about, okay, what are the other jurisdictions like Europe or Asia or Africa, South America, where there are still vehicles that get sold, and the regulatory bodies or the infrastructure in those countries and continents perhaps are not suited yet for a full self-driving. And so the ramp of full self-driving might be quite slow from a global perspective, but in markets where the infrastructure's there and the governments are comfortable with it, it's hard not to see how Tesla would have a monopoly on transportation if they had the scale. It's crazy to think about. And whenever I talk about this with my friends, because they'll be like, I'll tell them like there is a greater than a non-zero chance that Tesla could be a monopoly of transportation. They literally just stop talking to me. They're like, you're dumb. Like, what the hell is your problem? Are you drunk? Are you high? Like, what happened to you? But it's a legitimate thing that we have to think about. And I think for folks that are not investing in advice, but if they're looking to invest in a company, that has to be part of your model somewhere. Like, what if this happens?
It's such a hard thing to talk about because it's like everyone's playing a game of chess, and then all of a sudden you move the rook over and, looks like we're playing the game of life, and spin the wheel. Wait a minute, hang on. No, we were playing chess. No. See, I just crossed over, J6. All of a sudden, here we are in a completely different ball game. It's right. None of the rules apply from the past game. Don't even worry about it. And it's like, as soon as you start talking about like, so then I'll do that move, and everyone's like, wait, you'll do that move, and then what? Oh yeah, we're playing a completely different game. The cars will all drive themselves. Why would you own a car? Right. But I mean, I have all my pawns lined up. You can't attack my king. Well, that doesn't really matter anymore because your king isn't really valuable. It's not the piece anymore.
The variable, and I think that the one thing that gets discounted too is I don't think people really understand how the variable of cost is going to drive ownership or the population using this technology. Because in the end, it looks great. It looks cool. Oh my God, somebody's driving around without a driver. That's great. But when it's literally 20, 30 cents a mile, or maybe even less, if it's significantly less than an Uber, and then you think about what percent of the population in, say, the United States is paycheck to paycheck, it's struggling to pay the bills. They have to pay for gas. Now, gas is, $7 a gallon in some places. And say you have an environment where, you have a percentage of population that just cannot afford transportation, then you have an option that's available to you now that's going to be safer, theoretically. Let's just assume that's the case. And it's obviously going to be much, much cheaper. That is what's going to drive the adoption. That is the variable that's going to drive the adoption. And I think Tesla has been brilliant in really solving for that equation. Is like, we're just trying to get the price of transportation as low as humanly possible so that more people can be moved around in a safe manner. And as they get those self-driving cars, to your point, out there, people are going to be like, holy crap, look at this guy's in the back seat. There's no one in the front seat. How much you pay for that thing? Oh, $2. Where did you go? I went downtown. It was like a 20-mile drive. Boom, game over.
Farzad, we could talk to you all day. I want one last topic here because we have to stop somewhere, but this is a big one. This is, I think, maybe Elon's biggest move, which is Tesla Bot or Optimus Subprime, whatever you want to call it. I feel like if people don't understand full self-driving, they certainly don't understand Tesla Bot. They either think it's a dancing, person in a suit, or they haven't heard of it. What are your thoughts about Tesla Bot and the future of the company with it?
I think I'm going to sound like a crazy person. It has the potential of revolutionizing what it means to work. I think first Tesla has to prove that the technology is going to work and it's going to be useful. Now, given Tesla's track record, I do believe that's going to be the case, not just because I work there, because they've been able to execute on their products so far. Yes, they're late on full self-driving, but with the assumption that gets done here in the next couple of years, let's call it, it's going to, again, give them more clout. So to me, bot is going to happen. So it is going to happen. It's not a question of is it potentially going to fail or not. It is going to happen. So that's how I think about it. Cool. So if you have a bot that is now capable of working at a fraction of the cost of a human being, okay, what is the adoption of that bot going to look like? It's going to be insane. Most companies are going to trip over themselves to try and get some sort of system in whatever they're building to do that thing at a fraction of the cost. So although we will face a scenario where the things we're going to buy are likely to become cheaper over time because of how automated labor is going to become, I think there's going to be a period of time as a society where we're really going to have to solve the problem of there not being enough jobs for people to work. I do have a fear about that. I really do. Now, when I bring that up, talking about earlier on in the video, controversial statements, people are like, you're an idiot. Like, obviously, like there's going to be jobs available. Elon knows what he's doing. He wouldn't do this unless like there would be some sort of plan. Okay, maybe I'm not thinking about this correctly, but I do think there's going to be a transitional period that's going to hurt a lot. It's going to hurt a lot. Now, there might be a world of plenty once the bot is fully scaled up and AI systems take over for anything that the bot is not usable, and you have this age of automation and age of abundance. But the question becomes, what percentage of the population is going to have access to it, right? What percentage of the population is going to be able to take advantage of that age of plenty? Is it going to be reserved for the top 10% or 10% of the people that are able to have access to those things? Or is it going to be this truly like fully democratized technology where it's just part of world governments that you live in a country and everything is done for you? You don't have to worry about physical labor or whatever you want to call it. I think as a human species, I think something like this is probably where we're going anyway. And I think Tesla is pioneering, like they have in many different ways, they're pioneering the automation of physical labor through some sort of humanoid robot. And it's super fascinating to watch him play in that game. But I think the societal aspects of going down that path are going to be incredibly challenging. And I oftentimes wonder how much of the Twitter play and getting involved in more politics type stuff that Elon has been doing is with the preparation of knowing that this is going to cause a literal poop storm in some ways as he goes into this arena. I don't know what you guys think about that sort of thought process, but I can't help but go down that path.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, one parallel that you can kind of draw is between computers. Computers used to be this thing that would take up an entire building or an entire room. And, people were working on the computers and the little punch cards are coming out. Okay, great. And now it's computers and the internet, especially. We weren't thinking about the internet when we were thinking about computers. I mean, the technologists were, but the general people were just like, I'll have a computer on my desk and I can type things into it. They weren't thinking about like all the stuff that would get created through the internet. Right. It's like if you went back to 1962 and you were like, hey, there's going to be this thing called the internet. And it's like, okay, I'll get the news on the internet. I'll be able to listen to a ball game on the internet. It's like, no, it's bigger than that.
Well, it also allows for creating jobs that we don't think of as jobs. Like what the three of us are doing. If you had told people about this, 12 years ago, they would have been like, that's your what? That's your job?
But in 1960s, oh, I've got this show. I record it onto a tape, and then I make 10,000 copies.
But
and I
who
send them
broadcasts
out.
it for
Yeah,
you? I do think that is
impossible.
a funny thing is that we are going to disconnect jobs from the economy. Like up until now, you needed people to make things. Maybe it's some limited robots here and there, but it was all human labor. Once we no longer need human labor, we are going to actually... I think it's not going to be apocalyptic. I think we're actually going to have so much plenty. The new problems will be, do humans like having no actual job purpose? Do we just like having...
It's going to be this. I mean, there's problems with this, right? There's problems.
Oh, there's a lot of problems with it. Right.
Let me just... Oh.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, I think that having, like if I use myself as an example, you know, I've been incredibly blessed to be where I am right now. Like I could not be more thankful. This is insane. The fact that I have freaking random initials in my background of my freaking name with my guitars in the background, talking to you guys and having an audience on the internet is literally like the craziest thing that I could ever think of for myself. But I think I've been very fortunate to have had experiences in my life that had led me to this moment. And I've been able to achieve a certain level of financial security to be able to embark on this journey, right? So then if I put that within the context of, say, everyone else that perhaps hasn't been nearly as fortunate as I have in that world of plenty, what does that mean? You know, what does that mean within that variable? Because I'm just still concerned about like the starting points of the percentage of the population and where they have been. I think that's going to influence how quickly they gain access to this sort of like plenty. Like where are they going to be in line of having access to plenty? Or is it just going to happen? Or is it going to require someone like an Elon or, I don't know, some other altruistic person or somebody who's very like giving where they make a decision to make the plenty available for everybody? And I think the other variable that sort of was brought up too was, yeah, you could have brand new businesses that appear out of thin air. Like we talked about, you know, you talked about the computer in 1960 was just a punch card, but in 2022, it's freaking Amazon, you know, and it's YouTube and it's all these different things. Yeah, of course, those industries are going to appear, but I'm just having a tough time visualizing what that's truly going to look like. But being a positive, sort of like optimistic person, I still feel like it's going to work out. But I think it's going to be so freaking hard. It's going to be really hard for a lot of people, I think, to not have access to finding some sort of fulfillment in their life.
I want to feed off that positivity there because I think if we could just somehow emerge in 20 or 30 years in this place where we found a way so that I don't have to own the robot to have some value. If there's a way that government or Elon or someone passes this wealth down, we live in a very fear-based society right now where it's fear of losing my job. It's fear of paycheck. It's a fear that you have something more than I have. But if we can get to a place where it's like, oh, I wake up in the morning, my needs are met, there's no worries because robots are fixing my roof, then I think we start shifting our whole society away from this fear-based society where everything is just... I mean, if you really look at how much of your life is still fear-based, I know we're not being chased by lions, but we're still worried about, am I going to have enough food and so forth. If that disappears for everybody, I feel like it's going to be so amazing for society. I don't know how we get there. I know what you're saying. It's not obvious how you get there, but having basically free labor, we have seen this in history. It's called slavery. When societies had slavery, their economies did very well. And I think that that's what we're going to have. Now, I don't know what's going to happen when we get to general artificial intelligence, and now we have to actually deal with that. But like, as long as these aren't actually intelligent creatures doing work for us, as long as they're just robots, I think we're going to have so much just plenty. And it's kind of exciting to think about.
It's very true. No, I 100% agree with you. I think the mindset of scarcity and going to a mindset of abundance. I don't know if you guys have heard of Andrew Yang. He's like somebody that was running for president and then he was pushing UBI and stuff like that. I actually really like the way he was thinking about it, but it's sort of like that mindset is huge and it drives so much of our daily lives. You're 100% correct. My biggest fear is that unless we have truly extraordinary people in either government or at the helm of these technologies that are truly having the best of humanity's success and like they're really thinking about humanity when they're developing these things or ensuring that it's available for as many people. And unless those people are in place, I think human greed it has a potential to take over. And then you have this, instead of a utopia, like
we get RoboCop, you know.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But the fact that we're talking about this already is kind of insane. And I do think having conversations about this as early as we can is going to be incredibly important to have that pathway to that future that you described, which I think all of us want.
And I wonder if it's just going to change what is affordable. Because, I mean, if you look at computers, they're far more affordable than they were even, 20 years ago. But houses are far more expensive, right? And so we've had this trade-off where it's like, back in the 50s, anyone could pretty much buy a house. Not anyone, but, it's like, it was so easy back then. But buying a computer was just like, you're buying even when the personal computer came around, they were very expensive. I mean, we're talking multi-thousands of dollars for, something that wasn't anywhere close to as useful as we have today. Right. Versus today, you can get on a smartphone plan for very little money and run your whole life off of this little brick that sits in your pocket. What a wild world that we've switched from what is affordable to what is not affordable. And when you introduce robots, is just lots of things very affordable, except for certain things which are just now completely unattainable.
Well, but I mean, you just talked about a limited resource housing, but when you have an unlimited resource of labor to build those houses, yes, we only have limited land.
Then we would run into the land.
If
then you got to go to Mars.
If Elon's right and we have a declining population, then we're going to have plenty of land.
Right.
Yeah. Anything that is not tied to like some sort of finite or like super high demand thing that is literally like you can't make more of, I think those things are still going to be like, they're going to have some sort of like value to them. But then think about that for a second. Then you're going to have a percentage of your economy that is tied to like traditional market forces, call it, where you're going to have finite like land. And you go to Mars, sure, but that's like a 500,000 year thing. But like you have a percentage of your economy that's finite, and then you have a percentage of your economy that is non-finite, that it's like basically infinite because you have infinite labor. But like, how do those two things, like who gets the house? Who gets the nice land? It's like, it's super interesting to think about. I have no freaking idea how it's going to work.
But I totally agree with you. You're right about the conversation now. It's so exciting to have these conversations now because we are on the cusp of it, a lot of this stuff. And what's kind of sad is to look out there outside of our little Tesla bubble, and so few people even know that this is being worked on. I mean, they just keep hearing the same news headlines over and over again. It's like, guys, there's so much more to get excited about, to wake up in the morning to, that Elon is working on. And I think that's why both of us have YouTube channels. We're excited to talk about this one guy who has this amazing vision and can pull it off.
100% agreed. I think if more people were thinking about it, or at least knew that it existed, I think the conversation will naturally shift towards a better outcome for all of us. It's just a matter of like, how does one increase the percentage of people that are willing to absorb and sort of invest their time into thinking about these things? And then you talk about a whole different equation there where do people even have enough time to think about this thing?
Well, that's really interesting because you mentioned that you talk to your friends and they eventually stay, okay, stop talking, Farzad. But you, I'm sure, have very intelligent friends. What is that people just can't go there? They see that you're smart. They see that you work for this company. They see that you're probably, you're invested in the stock is going up and that you drive a cool car. But
they see that you've been right about many things in a row.
But they're like, I'm not going with you on FSD and I'm not going with you on the robots. So sorry. Why is that, do you think?
Dude, that's such a good question. I mean, I think that's really at the root of all this, right? I mean, that's a fascinating question.
Have we lost our imagination?
I honestly think some of it is that. I don't know if there's like a fear of like thinking big because it's somehow going to sound silly or it's somehow not attainable because of previous experience. I wonder how much of it is like that equation of time where people just don't have enough mental bandwidth to sit down and think about these things. Maybe they just have too much going on in their lives. I do think that's probably a much bigger equation than a lot of us are given credit to. You think about from a percentage population perspective, say the United States, what percentage of people that live, say, paycheck to paycheck or are having just struggling in everyday life, like how much do they want to sit down and think about the freaking robot future? Like they're going to be like, hell no, I got to freaking feed my kid. I got to go raise a family. I got to go to a job I hate. I got to freaking eat food that I don't like. I got to sleep on a bed I don't like. Like there's all these short-term goals. I think it's a function of not having enough things in your short term that you're happy about that allow you to think about the long term. So maybe if we figure out how to fix the short-term stuff of like, once people are actually happy with the life they have, or at least can see a pathway for themselves to have a better future, maybe they start thinking about the future, I have no idea, man. That's such a good question.
Do you remember this in school? I have memories of getting up in front of the class and reading a book report or something, and then being told to cite my references. It was all about, at least in my day, I'm dating myself, but it was all about bibliographies and, well, where'd you get that piece of information? There was no value in my imagination or my thoughts. It was, well, who said that? Where did you get that? And I wonder if a lot of our education is just cite references. Tell me where you got it. And less, we should put less emphasis on that and more on just the imagination of the student. And I feel like that might be a part of it, where we just weren't rewarded for having ideas. We were more rewarded for just back that up.
Or even solving problems or doing anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you go into most classrooms and it's just, okay, we're doing worksheets today.
Right.
Oh, okay. And, it's only the amazing teachers, and there are plenty of amazing teachers out there who are actually doing things with their students, actually showing them physical things. I want to bring it back to like the forklift
Exactly.
thing. It's like, we did something today where we took a little bit of a risk,
Right. You were in Tesla University. I mean, basically you got a 4-year degree in Tesla University.
Right.
It's so true. Yeah. I think that's a fascinating point. And I think I agree with you, because I think you think about, maybe this is just a discussion about the U.S. education system, because that's sort of what I've been mostly exposed to. It's, when was this education system sort of constructed? It was around, World War II? After World War II, you're just trying to crank out people that can work in factories and do sort of manual labor. So like, what are you optimizing for then? Like, you're just optimizing for folks that just know how to take instructions and do them, and say why they did it. So like, what percentage of the education system is actually investing in teaching people how to actually think critically and coming up with solutions from scratch and imagination, right? I think that's such a good point. And it probably is going to require some level of revamp to how we approach education to, again, reinstill that, or still instill that sort of imagination, far-reaching future thinking process, where our population is going to be much more geared about thinking about the future. I think that's I never thought about that. That's a really good point. It will definitely help. Why wouldn't it help? It would totally help.
I could go on talking to Farzad all day long. If you are interested in hearing more, you should definitely go to his YouTube channel, because he's got long form content where he talks about so many interesting topics. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I can't wait to visit you again.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the time. Likewise, I could talk to you guys for literally freaking 4 days straight here. I love the great conversation, and I really appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.